Welcome back to another Dyson Anarchy deck tech. Today we're going to be going over my build of the Sliver Overlord. So here's the Commander Sliver Overlord to start off with. I have M14 tokens as well as new Commander set tokens for Slivers. This deck consists of 37 lands, 5 instants, 1 sorcery, 6 enchantments, 6 artifacts, and 44 creatures. We're going to start off today with the lands. Of the 37 lands in the deck, there are 3 of each basic, and that's 15 total. I do have 1 proxied card in here, a Badlands, a dual land from back in the day. I have the card here. I don't like to play with it, but I do have that as the proxy in the deck. So on to the non-basic lands, Badlands, City of Brass, Reflecting Pool, Command Tower, Forbidden Orchard, Mana Confluence, Exotic Orchard, and Secluded Courtyard. Secluded Courtyard, you choose a creature type, doesn't come into play tapped. It's a pretty decent card for any tribal deck. City of Brass deals damage to you for when it becomes tapped. The Reflecting Pool, any type of land that your opponent controls, you can make a copy of that, tap it for that color rather. Forbidden Orchard, when you tap it for mana, target opponent creates a 1/1 spirit creature token. Kind of way out the bad with the good on that. Mana Confluence is almost exactly like City of Brass, though you have to pay the life to produce 1 mana of any color through Mana Confluence. Exotic Orchard, add to your mana 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. Reflecting Pool is what you produce. Got those backwards. So that's it for the regular non-basic lands. The other non-basic lands which are in the deck are shock lands and fetch lands. The shock lands I have are Hallowed Fountain, Stomping Ground, Steam Vents, Watery Grave, Overgrown Tomb, Temple Garden, and Breeding Pool. I might be missing some along the way, and I might be getting more dual lands as I go along. But 5-color decks are not cheap to build. Along with the shock lands, which are good because you can have them come into play untapped, only dealing 2 damage to you. We have fetch lands. The fetch lands that I use are Flooded Strand, Windswept Heath, Wooded Foothills, Polluted Delta, Scalding Tarn, Verdant Catacombs, and Arid Mesa. You get them as they come along. Pull them out of packs. Most of these actually I did pull out of packs. So those are good because you can pay 1 life and sacrifice it, search your library for a plains and island, mountain forest, so on and so forth, which would correlate to the shock lands or the dual lands. So out of the lands, next we're going to move on to the sorcery. The 1 sorcery I have in the deck is Shard Convergence. It's 4 mana for search your library for a plains card, an island card, a swamp card, a mountain card. Reveal those cards, put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. Goes right along with the dual lands and the shock lands, plains, island, so on and so forth, you know. That's the 1 sorcery. Besides Kodama's Reach. Search library for a basic land card. 2 basic land cards, reveal that, put into your hand, the other one into play tapped. That was in the instant pile. So there are 4 instants in my deck. Swords to Plowshares, Worldly Tutor, Cyclonic Rift, and Enlightened Tutor. Swords to Plowshare removes creature from the game. Worldly Tutor searches your library for a creature card, put it into your hand. Enlightened Tutor, you can search for an artifact or an enchantment, which does come into play later on. And Cyclonic Rift, everybody hates Cyclonic Rift, right? To the enchantments, I play Awakening, Mirari's Wake, Exploration, Sylvan Library, Mana Echoes, and Burgeoning. Burgeoning and Exploration, 2 great cards to put down your first turn. Whenever an opponent plays a land, you may choose a land card from your hand and put it into play. And Exploration, you can play an additional land on each of your turns. Sylvan Library lets you draw extra cards, which is always a fun card to use. Mirari's Wake, creatures you control get +1/+1, and whenever you tap a land for mana, it produces 1 mana of any color that land could produce, in addition to what it already produced. Awakening, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, untap all creatures and lands. So that fits in pretty good with slivers. Especially when I tap them for mana and I search my library for other slivers and doing that on other people's turns. This deck really likes to play while other people are taking their turns. It's just a lot of searching. Next we're going to go into the artifacts. I run a Soul Ring, a Coat of Arms, a Fellwar Stone, Chromatic Lantern, Urza's Incubator, and Arcane Signet. Soul Ring, Fellwar Stone, Arcane Signet, all self-explanatory. Same with the Chromatic Lantern. If you're playing a 5-color deck, chances are you're running all 4 of those cards. Urza's Incubator, when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, and creatures of the chosen type cost 2 colorless less to cast. I like to play with lower casting cost slivers so I could just flip them out and get them out quicker. I do have some bigger ones that cost more mana, so that's well to have in there. Coat of Arms, you want to pump up the slivers as much as you can. That pumps them up pretty well, especially when you got a whole army of them. Now on to the creatures of the deck. These are in no particular order, just the way that I pulled them out of the deck to show. We have a Mesmeric Sliver, a Shadow Sliver, a Siphon Sliver, a Pulmonic Sliver, Ghost Flame Sliver, Vampiric Sliver, Megantic, and the Hive Lord. Mesmeric Sliver has an ability called Fate Seal. All slivers gain that ability. And when it comes into play, the controller looks at the top card of an opponent's library, and then you can put it onto the bottom of their library if you so choose. Shadow Sliver. Great when you're trying to do commander damage. Shadow's an old ability. Not many people use it anymore, so Shadow can only be blocked by creatures with Shadow. It's great to get around. Siphon Sliver. All slivers gain lifelink. I mean, that's something that you need too. With Pulmonic Sliver, all slivers gain flying, and if this creature would be put into a graveyard, you may put it on top of its owner's library instead. It gets away from... It recycles your slivers. It gets away from them going to the graveyard. Ghost Flame Sliver makes slivers all colorless, which can get around story circles, circle of protections, color protections. That's always fun. Vampiric, all slivers have when this creature deals damage. Whenever a creature is dealt damage by this creature this turn, It's put into a graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's a 3/3, costs 4 mana. It's one that does have its uses, but for the most part, it's just another sliver to pump out. Megantic Sliver, 6-drop, 3/3, but all slivers get +3/+3, so it's a 6/6. It pumps up the slivers pretty well, especially when they get double strike. Hive Lord, I've seen people use as their commanders before. Gives all slivers indestructible. It's not bad, 5/5. 1 mana of each color. Move on to the next set. Thorncaster, one of my favorite slivers. Ward Sliver. Might. Battle. Brood. Venom. Root. And Diffusion. Thorncaster, whenever this creature attacks, it deals 1 damage to target creature or player. So you got a bunch of slivers out there, and as soon as you declare them attackers, they each ping the opponent for 1. Ward Sliver, all slivers get protection from the chosen color. When this creature comes into play, you choose a color. It can help out. It really does help out. Might Sliver, another pump sliver, gives all +2/+2. Same with Battle Sliver, gives all slivers +2/+0. Brood Sliver, whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a player, its controller may put a 1/1 colorless sliver creature token into play. You got a bunch of big slivers, give them all trample, give them all shadow, give them all flying, get them around, and them doing damage to players, you get a bunch of little tokens. These things swim up really fast. Venom Sliver, 2-drop, 1/1, gives all slivers Death Touch. It's a great card. Root Sliver, it's probably a staple in any sliver deck. It can't be countered itself, and it says sliver spells cannot be countered. Diffusion Sliver, 2-drop, 1/1. Whenever a sliver creature you control becomes target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its controller plays 2 colorless mana. It gets around in the early game, and it's another small drop sliver. I like to have the lower casting cost slivers with Gemhide or with Gemhide Sliver or Mana Weft Sliver out to have small mana dorks, really. This deck does require a lot of mana, most 5-color decks too. This batch we have Lava Belly Sliver. Whenever this creature enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to target creature, player or planeswalker, and I gain 1 life. Horn Sliver gives trample from a 2/2 for 3-drop. Bone Scythe, 2/2, all slivers have double strike. And we have Sliver Queen. Sliver Queen's a 7/7 for 5, 1 of each color, mana. And you can pay 2 colorless mana to put a sliver token into play. Now, going back to the enchantments, if you have mana echoes, so you pay 2 colorless mana, you put a sliver token into play, and mana echo says, whenever a creature comes into play, you may add 1 colorless to your mana pool for each creature you control that shares a creature type with it. Obviously, you pump out a bunch of slivers, you get a bunch of colorless mana to make more slivers, and you can generate an infinite amount of slivers that way, which is a fun little thing in this deck. It's only ever happened twice.
He's going infinite.
Blur Sliver. It's a haste outlet sliver. There are a couple of haste outlets for slivers in this deck. It's also very good to have with the Mana Weft and the Gemhide, so you can get them smaller slivers out earlier, tap them for mana, and use them for what you will. Predatory Sliver, 2-drop, 1/1, all slivers get +1/+1. Homing Sliver is interesting. Each sliver in each player's hand has Sliver Cycling 3. And this has Sliver Cycling 3 itself. So it works like the commander, Sliver Overlord, you can pay 3 to search your library for a sliver. Just the same way. Muzzle Sliver, it's the same as Predatory Sliver. It's 2-drop 1/1. All slivers get +1/+1. I have noticed about this deck that it does lean into green more than any other color, but it's still a 5-color deck. Some fun ones coming up here. We have Leeching Sliver. Whenever Sliver you control attacks, defending player loses a life. So it just automatically pings whenever you declare an attacker. Sentinel. All slivers you control get Vigilance. That speaks for itself. It's also a 2-drop. 2/2. Bone Splitter. All slivers get +2/+0. Kind of like the other pumping slivers that we've gone through so far. Screeching. All slivers have tap. Target player puts top card of their library into their graveyard. Never used it like that. It's a nice 1-drop, low drop CMC sliver. But I assume if you get infinite slivers out like this possible, you could just mill everybody right off the bat if you have the haste outlet for it instead of attacking with them. Talon Sliver, 1/1, all slivers gain first strike. Cheap sliver, decent ability. Then we move on to the first sliver, another one that I have seen as commander in other people's decks. It has Cascade, and all sliver spells that you cast have Cascade. Gets to be pretty fun, and gets to be a lot of triggers going off that you gotta pay attention to, because I've missed a few triggers of it myself. Crystalline Sliver. In our play group, I think most people hate this card the most out of the deck. Slivers can't be the target of spells or abilities. It gives Shroud. So I can't target my own slivers either, but it's quick. It's usually one of the first ones that I go searching for. Speaking of quick, we got Quick Sliver. You can cast slivers anytime that you could play an instant. It's combat tricks. It's fun to throw people off sometimes. On to the next group. We have Frenzy, Crypt, Toxin, Heart, Striking, Gemhide, Mana Weft, and Gale Rider. So these are mostly all low CMC slivers. The biggest one we have here is 4 on the Toxin. But starting with Frenzy, all slivers have Frenzy 1, and Frenzy 1 is whenever a sliver attacks and isn't blocked, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Not bad on a 2-drop 1/1. Crypt Sliver is a 1/1 for 2. All slivers have tap regenerate target sliver. It can be useful. Hopefully Crystalline isn't out, but these guys are meant to go with these ones, Mana Weft and Gemhide. Toxin, whenever a sliver deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature. It can't be regenerated. That's great when you have things like First Strike, Double Strike, or Indestructible on all your slivers. Heart Sliver, that's a haste outlet, another cheap one. Great card to play. Striking Sliver's a 1-drop 1/1 that gives first strike. Cheap, good ability. Gemhide and Mana Weft, both 2-drop 1/1 slivers. They give all slivers tap, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. Great, great, great cards. Especially with the smaller drop slivers. Gale Rider gives all slivers flying for 1. There's probably 3 flying outlets, I believe, in this deck. And that's the cheapest one by far, 1-drop. To the last bit, we have Hunter Sliver, Constricting Sliver, Winged Sliver, and Blade Sliver. Hunter Sliver gives all slivers the Provoke ability. If you've never heard of Provoke, That's whenever the Sliver attacks, its controller may have target creature defending player controls untap and block it if able. So you can force their big creatures to block it and die, or force the creatures that they leave hiding away tapped. Constricting Sliver is probably one of the best slivers in the toolbox. All slivers you control have, when this creature enters the battlefield, you may exile target creature and opponent controls until this creature leaves the battlefield. It's an O-ring. Every one of your slivers is an Oblivion ring. And if you have the right things out, it's hard to get rid of your slivers. Moving on to Winged Sliver. It's a 2-drop 1/1. All slivers gain flying. It's nice fast mana acceleration when you have the Mana Dork slivers out. And Blade Sliver. Gives all slivers +1/+0. It's a 2/2 itself to start off with. This may not be the best build of a sliver deck. This is just a build that I've been playing around with for a few years now, and I do tweak it every so often. I'm glad to see that Wizards of the Coast came out with the new sliver deck, and I will be looking to the new slivers to see if there's anything I want to add to this. And with that, I'll say thank you for watching.